Today we are going to discuss about the case of valvular heart disease. It's kind of busy short case presentation, but due to time insufficiency, we are going to discuss special regarding echocardiography. I will summarize the history and examination of this patient. I will stress on echocardiography finding of this patient. This patient Kushal
We
Sahib.
don't have to comment on clinical examination.
Yes sir, you can comment of course. Your clinical experience is very good for us. Patient is Kushal Shah, 25 years male, referred by private physician to us with presenting complaints of palpitations for 2 years, breathlessness on exertion for 3 months. Patient was apparently alright 2 years back when he developed palpitations on exertion, which were regular in nature, not associated with any chest pain, syncope or giddiness, and lived by rest. Patient also developed breathlessness since last 3 months, which were present during exertion. Previously, he was able to play football, which is played regularly. Now he developed dyspnea after 5 to 10 minutes of play, corresponding to NYHA class 2 of dyspnea. Breathlessness was relieved by rest and not associated with any cough or expectoration or any seasonal variation.
So Vishwanath, in general,
Yes, sir.
which are the valvular lesion which produces palpitation?
The most common valvular disease presenting palpitation as AR, AS, and EMRs. The lesions which cause AV hypertrophy or AV dilation.
Generally it is regurgitant lesion.
Regurgitant
Stenotic
lesion.
lesion.
Yes, yes,
AS, we don't see palpitation in AS.
yes.
Okay, unless there is rhythm irregularities.
Most common lesion is ARs, which present as palpitation.
Regurgitation lesion will have palpitation, not stenotic.
Yes.
Or mix can always have.
Presenting illness patient had consulted his physician for palpitation before 6 months. Echocardiography was done. Then he was just informed about some mild valvular abnormality for which no medication were given to the patient and symptoms which were relieved automatically. Past history patient don't have any history of PND, hemoptysis, syncope, pre-syncope, giddiness, fever with rash, oliguria, middle edema, abdominal distension or mesh or any signs of recurrent respiratory infections. He had a history of road traffic accident before 4 years with multiple fracture. At that time, he was not diagnosed with any cardiac lesions or anything like that. On examination, patient was conscious oriented with time, person and place. Height was 174 cm, weight was 68 kilograms, so that BMI is 22.4. Arm span was 172 cm, upper segment 89, lower segment 85. So as to conclude, the patient don't have any sign of any Marfan diabetes. On general examination, pulse rate was 78 beats per minute in right radial artery, which was regular in rhythm, high volume collapsing pulse, all peripheral pulses were well fed, no radioradial or radiofemoral delay. Blood pressure in right upper limb is 130 by 40 mm of mercury, in left upper limb is 120 by 50 mmHg, and both lower limb was 210 by 50 mm of mercury. So here is a significant difference of blood pressure in upper limb and lower limb observed. Respiratory rate was normal, temperature was febrile, JVP was normal 7 cm above the sternal angle at 45 degrees. With prominent P waves, hepatocellular reflex was negative. Head to examination, patient don't have any parallel cyanosis clubbing lymphadenopathy. There was no signs of infective endocarditis. Peripheral signs of ER were present in this patient in the form of Landolfi sign was present, dancing carotid where there, collapsing pulse was there, pistol short femoral was there. Neurosis murmur, which was systolic and diastolic nature, was present in this patient. Hill sign in the form of difference in upper limb and lower limb BP was there, which was 88 mm of mercury. Coming to the cardiovascular examination of this patient, patient's trachea was in central position, chest is bilaterally symmetrical, no precordial bulge. Apex peak was present in left sixth intercostal space, 3 cm lateral to mid-clavicular line, which was hyperdynamic in nature, so that LV type of apex with medial retraction. There was no parasternal heave, suprasternal pulsations were present, epigastric aortic pulsations were there. There was a palpable P2, no other pulsations or thrills, no dilated stars and signs. Percussion was left heart border correspond to cardiac apex. Left second intercostal space has impaired node. Liver dullness is percussed in right fifth intercostal space in mid-clavicular line. Probes space is tympanic to percuss. On auscultation at mitral wall area, S1 was soft. There was a pansystolic murmur of grade 3 intensity which was high pitched, soft blowing at the apex, radiating to axilla, best heard in diaphragm of stethoscope in left lateral decubitous position, which were best heard in breath held in expiration. There was no S2 and S4. In tricuspid area, S1 was soft. In pulmonary area, P2 was loud with wide second splitting of second heart sound. Grade 3 by 6 intensity of ejection systolic murmur were present in pulmonary area, which was best heard with diaphragm of stethoscope with patient leaning forward and breath held in inspiration. This murmur was increased with passive exercise. This is the main murmur which we heard in aortic area. S2 was soft. The early diastolic murmur of grade 3 intensity, which was high pitched, soft blowing murmur, present in right second and left third intercostal space, decrescendo, extending to the more half of the diastole, best heard with the diaphragm of the stethoscope, in sitting and leaning forward position, with breath held in expiration. So, summarizing the positive points in this patient has a history of palpitation.
You heard all these auscultatory findings by yourself?
Yes.
You just described it. Have
Yes.
you heard it all?
Yes, yes.
What is this number that you have described, early diastolic murmur? That murmur is called as? This is of air, right?
Yes.
That murmur is known as professor's murmur. It was a dictum in past that only professors can use to hear this. Nobody else.
Summarizing the positive findings in this patient has a palpitation, breathlessness, upper limb, lower limb, BP difference, peripheral signs of ER present, LV type of hyperdynamic apex, loud P2, ESM at pulmonary area, PSM at mitral area, and EDM at aortic area. Summarizing all these findings, the probable diagnosis was kept as valvular heart disease with severe aortic regurgitation, with mitral regurgitation, with pulmonary arterial hypertension, in sinus rhythm, in NYH grade 2 dyspnea, with no signs of any infective endocarditis. Coming to investigation, we have done the ECG of this patient. This is the ECG which was normal standardization. Rate was 65 per minute, which was regular. Axis was left axis deviation around 30 to 60 degree. Wave morphology is there was T-wave inversion in lead 1, AVL and V6 with tall QRS complexity with precordial. It's a history of LV hypertrophy with LV strain pattern.
Where is the strain pattern?
This is a laterally T-wave inversion, so was AVL and V6. T-wave inversion associated with
Is this a strain pattern? Priyank?
So T inversion of the lateral is only seen, and but not typical LVDV. Atypical LVDV is there, not typical strain pattern.
there were no Q wave in the precordial to say LV overload type.
Is this a major criteria for strain?
No.
Every strain major criteria you should have ST depression.
Yes, ST depression, T-wave inversion and
That's not there.
classical. Chest X-ray of this patient shows there was a this is a PAV group chest X-ray with well exposed field with central eyes, which shows clear lung fields with dilated mediastinum with cardiomegaly. There is obtuse cardiophrenic angle suggestive of cardiomegaly of LV hypertrophy. There were prominent bronchovascular margins showing prominent descending pulmonary arteries. There was visualization of pulmonary vasculature beyond 50% of beyond the mid-lamellar line, suggestive of prominent pulmonary arterial hypertension.
What was the right border formed of?
First is the arch of aorta, pulmonary artery. This is a
Right.
this is the superior vena cava. This is the pulmonary artery, right branch of pulmonary artery, is a descending pulmonary artery. This is the right atrium.
Is right atrium. You
Huh.
don't say any double set, right?
No, sir, no double shot. Coming to the echo of this patient, this is a flash wave view of this patient, which can clearly show the dilated left ventricle. There is normal opening of mitral aortic wall. There is no signs of any rheumatic affection of mitral wall. Coming to the dimensions, M-mode taken at the level of mitral wall, we can see the LV diastolic dimension were 88 millimeters. LV systolic dimensions were 60 millimeters, and LV systolic volume, N diastolic volume was for 429 millimeters, which shows severely dilated left ventricle.
Huge.
Yes, sir, very huge. Here we can see the aortic wall closure line, which the closure was here, which was eccentric closure, which gives us clue about to think about bicuspid aortic wall. To confirm the same, we have taken the M mode at the aortic wall level. Here we can see the eccentric closure of aortic wall. Coming to the dimension of aorta, the aorta dimension were 3.7 centimeters, LA dimension were 5.4 centimeters, which was dilated aorta and directly left atrium. When color Doppler done at this place, we can clearly see that there was a regurgitant flow of aortic regurgitation seen in left ventricle, and there was also regurgitant flow seen at mitral level, such of aortic regurgitation and mitral regurgitation. In this patient, in the high short axis, we can clearly see the two leaflets of aortic wall. There is absence of Mercedes-Benz sign. There were only two leaflets facing, which was right coronary cusp upward and non-coronary cusp downwards.
So they were not coacting in the periphery from where the regurgitation was coming.
Next gradient test. Next slide. This was the steel image of bicuspid aortic wall, which shows elliptical opening of aortic wall, which gives us clue about bicuspid. Pulse field Doppler at the pulmonary artery shows there was a mild pulmonary regurgitation. This was the apical fourth chamber view. This finding were the same. LV was dilated. There was a good contractibility of all segment of left ventricle. Mitral wall opening is 5. There is no issue. When this 4 chamber converted to 5 chamber, here we can see the largely dilated ascending aorta with normal aortic roots. Color Doppler done at the apical 4 chamber view. Here we can see the jet of mitral regurgitation confirmed by the same, and there was a normal diastolic function in this patient. And when color Doppler done at the aortic level, we can see the massive aortic jet which was reaching up to the LV apex, suggest of severe aortic regurgitation. At this and continuous wave Doppler done at the aortic wall shows pressure half time around 255 milliseconds, correspond to moderate aortic regurgitation. So coming to the measurements of aorta in this patient, the measurements at the level of aortic wall was 30 millimeters, which were normal. Measurement at the level of aortic root at the 5.1 centimeter. The normal reading is less than 35 centimeters. So the dilated root of aorta. And immediately after that, the measurement of ascending aorta was 25 millimeters, which were absolutely normal. So in this patient, only dilatation of aortic root was observed. Coming to the suprasternal view, to see any coarctation on anything, patient aortic arch has a normal dimensions of 20 millimeters, and descending aorta was normal dimensions of 18 millimeters. This is the classic findings of aortic regurgitation. In suprasternal view, we can see the diastolic flow reversal in descending aorta. So that there is normal blue colored flow in normal individual in descending aorta. In case of severe AR, we can see the flow backwards to the probe in the form of mosaic pattern, which is seen here. It is suggestive of severe aortic regurgitation. To confirm the same flow, we have done the pulse wave Doppler at the level of abdominal aorta. This is normal systolic flow in abdominal aorta. Here we can see the retrograde holodiastolic flow in abdominal aorta, which is also suggestive of severe aortic regurgitation. To confirm the diagnosis and aortic wall morphology, we have done the transesophageal echo of this patient. This is at the level of aortic wall. Here we can see two leaflets of aortic wall. Here is the catch. When we done the transesophageal echo, it's not a classical bicuspid wall with a fusion of two cusps or any rapid echo. There was two cusps were clearly visible, and third something like is there. It was curves cusp or perforation, don't do. We have to modify the view further on. So here we can carefully see there was third cusp was there, which was rudimentary. This cusp was non-coronary cusp, this was right coronary cusp, and this is a rudimentary left coronary cusp was there. Here we can see that cusp. When we put color Doppler in this, we can see site of regurgitation in this. First, between the rudimentary cusp and right and non-coronary cusp, this is the site of aortic regurgitation. तो जहाँ से rudimentary cusp था और left और right coronary जिस gap था वहाँ से regurgitation flow था यहाँ पे.
So that rudimentary cusp was not coacting properly.
No, slow. When explained 3D view of aortic wall taken, the rudimentary cusp not visualized in this. This view shows clearly as bicuspid aortic wall. This was this is color Doppler done at the level of aortic wall. Here we can very clearly see the flow of the site of aortic regurgitation. This was the first site of aortic regurgitation between RCC and NCC, and second aortic regurgitation site is between rudimentary cusp and other normal cusp. These were the two sites of regurgitation in this patient. Something new, different can also be seen in this patient. That we can see here. There was something gap between non-coronary cusp and the third regurgitation flow was present in this area. Here we can see this is the cusp, this is aortic wall, and this is the gap. This is a suggestive of perforation in non-coronary cusp. This is the site of third regurgitation gate.
Show me that.
So this is previous slide. This, yes sir, and this is the regurgitant jet from this area, sir. In next window we can more clearly see that things. Here in the second image, we can clearly see the gap between the cusp, the non-coronary cusp, sir. This shows perforation of leaflets. So coming to the aortic sites of aortic regurgitation, we have three sites of aortic regurgitations. One between rudimentary cusp, and second between RCC and NCC, and third between perforated NCC cusp. Coming to the discussion, the patient diagnosis to say it is a bicuspid aortic wall or tricuspid aortic wall with a rudimentary cusp is there. Coming to the severity of this patient, patient has left ventricular side dilated with central jet more than 65% of LVOT with, and visually we can say it is an aortic regurgitation as the aortic jet was reaching up to LV apex, so we can see it is a severe aortic regurgitation. Coming to the, is this patient is compensated or decompensated? Coming to the dimension, there was, if dimension of LV were more than 55 centimeter, we can say that patient is decompensated. In our patient, the systolic dimension were 60 and diastolic dimension were 80 millimeters, showing the patient was severely decompensated aortic regurgitation. Doing the cardiac class 1 indication of cardiac cath lab includes only assessment of coronary anatomy prior to aortic wall surgery in this patient with risk of coronary artery disease. In medical care, in acute severe aortic regurgitation, surgical intervention is usually indicated, but patient may be supported medically before that. Dobutamine can be given to augment cardiac output and shorten
You haven't
diastole.
done GLS of the LV?
Sir.
GLS नहीं किया?
नहीं sir.
Because what was the ejection fraction?
Ejection fraction was normal, sir. 50, fair LV, sir. 55.
It was done by which method?
The Simpson's method, plus visual embolic, sir.
The Simpson has 50% of.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think GLS would help here?
Yes, sir. Very much. GLS should be done
Must be, right?
to rule out any bad.
Exactly. And if there was, you said, according to the LV cell, it was a decompensated.
Yes.
And why there was no raised JVP? Why there was no repeat tubular reflux? Why patient was not having edema? pulmonary rates.
So this can be the patient mildly decompensated with going by the dimension of LV, sir. LV was usually dilated, so it goes in favor of. But patient don't
Goes in
have.
favor of severity rather than decompensation, because decompensation is subjective. For 80, somebody may be in bed, somebody may die, and somebody may be playing football for 5-10 minutes.
Yes.
Decompensation is a clinical phenomenon, not a size phenomenon.
Yes. Patient don't have any symptom
Yeah,
of failure at present, sir, or any
Exactly.
condition.
Exactly right. So he is still compensating. Still he is, at least at rest.
Yes. Dopamine can be given to this patient to augment cardiac
What
output.
was the socioeconomic class of this patient?
Sorry, sir.
Socioeconomic class of this patient?
It's good socio-economic class.
It has to be good, otherwise he must have developed infective endocarditis by the time.
Yes.
If it is from lower socioeconomic class.
Yes.
આવા વાળમાં તો થઈ જ છે.
Yes.
You have three trigger relation sites, right?
Medical care, we can give dopamine and sodium nitroprusside to this patient to reduce afterload and in hypertension to reduce hypertension crisis. In chronic severe AR, vasodilator therapy will be used in select condition to reduce afterload in patient with systolic hypertension to minimize wall stress and optimize LV function. In normal TCU patients, vasodilator therapy is not likely to reduce regurgitant volume significantly, thus may not be clinically benefited. The acute administration of sodium nitroprusside and adrenaline, ifidipine or phenobarbital causes decrease in peripheral vascular resistance and results in immediate augmentation of forward cardiac output and decrease in regurgitant volume. These medications can be given in the patient with acute presentation, acute severe ERs. Coming to medical therapy in chronic patients, reduced tender diastolic volume and increased ejection fraction have also been observed in small number of patients receiving long-term oral therapy with hydralazine and nifedipine for a period of 1 to 2 years. With nifedipine, these effects are associated with decreasing LV mass, and with enalapril, it is associated with reduced blood pressure and associated with decreasing end diastolic volume, but mass of LV, no change in ejection fraction with enalapril. So we can give patient with nifedipine and enalapril if patient is not undergoing any surgery in the condition, in the following condition.
What is the source of this nifedipine point?
ACC guidelines.
Is this from SSC which year?
Yes.
Because nifedipine will produce reflex tachycardia, it may decompensate.
Only these two medications were indicated in.
Yeah, but you agree to my point or not?
Yes.
Reflex tachycardia is the most common side effect of nifedipine.
Yes.
You should use something else which has less chances of tachycardia.
Yes. But vasodilator effect can augment the cardiac output. That's why I think.
Yeah, so vasodilator, any other which don't have tachycardia effect, that you can use. Nifedipine will be risky.
Yes. This therapy is indicated in the patient with chronic severe ER and symptom of LV dysfunction, but who are not candidates for surgery. It is reasonable for short-term therapy in a patient with severe LV dysfunction and heart failure symptom to improve their hemodynamic profile before any surgery. And it is acceptable for long-term therapy in a patient of asymptomatic patient with severe ER and LV dilation normally. This is class 2 indication. This can be avoided. The definitive treatment is only aortic wall surgery.
What is the prophylaxis of IE?
Generally, IE prophylaxis is not indicated in cases of isolated aortic regurgitation.
It is not isolated, it is MR.
With MR, we have to use, sir.
You have to mention here,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes. Current ACC guidelines for aortic wall surgery, sir. Replacement of diseased aortic wall is done if patient is symptomatic, patient is asymptomatic with resting EF of less than 55%, and in asymptomatic AV patient with LV dilatation, so that LV end diastolic dimensions more than 55 millimeters. Coming to mechanical versus bioprosthetic AV, patient for undergoing AV replacement, carefully the consideration should be given to the relative risk and benefits of mechanical versus bioprosthetic walls. Mechanical walls are more durable but require long-term anticoagulation with warfarin due to increased risk of thrombosis. and bioprocedure carry greater risk of long-term deterioration and risk of reoperation, but they avoid need of long-term warfarin therapies. So now what we should do in this patient or any patient with aortic regurgitation is the OPD care is important slides. When end systolic dimension less than 45 and diastolic dimension more than 60, then we have to evaluate this patient regularly for 6 to 12 months follow with repeat echo in 12 months. If there was increasing dimension of LV, then we should follow this patient 3 months. In our patient, there was end systolic dimension was more than 55 millimeters and diastolic diameters was more than 75 millimeters. So surgery is advised in this patient. Complications. What will happen if we left untreated this condition? This can lead to considerable morbidity and mortality from either underlying cause, typically infected endocarditis or aortic dissection, or decompensation of LV. Potential complications in this patient with chronic severe ER include progressive LV dysfunction, dilatation, MI, arrhythmia, and sudden cardiac death. Prognosis. Coming to the prognosis of the patient with severe ER depend on the presence and absence of LV dysfunction and symptoms as follows. In asymptomatic patient with normal ejection fraction, rate of progression to symptoms and LV dimensions is less than 6% per year. Rate of progression with asymptomatic LV dilatation is less than 3.5 per year, and rate of sudden cardiac death is less than 0.2% per year. In asymptomatic patient with decreased EF, the rate of progression to symptoms is more than 25% per year. So decreased EF, we have to monitor in the EF in this patient regularly. In symptomatic patient, mortality rate is more than 10% per year. So coming to the all summary of this, the strongest predictor and outcome of echocardiographic parameters are ejection fraction and LV and systolic dimensions. So as such said that we should do the global strain of this patient to evaluate actually the left ventricular systolic function in this patient. And this is the main predictor of the outcome in this patient.
I have no question.
Thanks.
How many percent is the